All right, my friends, thanks so much for staying up late with us to cap off this truly historic week in politics. Every day has been packed with new details, breaking news after breaking news, another new development. Today has been no different. You couldn't write this for television, for a movie. You really couldn't. Some of the big stories we're following right now. The presidential mudslinging contest does begin, and one congressman's comments that may actually be headed towards a censure vote. Meantime, former President Trump's running mate under fire after an old interview surfaces. It has to do with women without children and some other comments. We share some strategies also to help you avoid political stress if your family and you are fighting about politics, and an eye-opening poll revealing which group of people are the key to winning Michigan's 15 electoral votes. This as we begin our show tonight with the campaign trail, where it really has been an extremely eventful 24 hours for Vice President Kamala Harris as she secures the endorsement of possibly the most well-known name in the Democratic Party. Take a listen.
We called to say Michelle and I couldn't be prouder to endorse you and to do everything we can to get you through this election and into the Oval Office.
Oh, my goodness. Michelle, Brock, this means so much to me. I am looking forward to doing this with the two of you, Doug and I both.
Former President Obama had been among the last of the highly sought Democratic endorsements for the Harris campaign. By the way, there was no explanation for the delay of this endorsement as we close in on 1 week. That's this weekend since Harris replaced President Biden on the ticket. You know, you can get a lot done in a week. Just ask the Harris campaign's war chest, which currently is closing in on $500 million. And tomorrow, the first Kamala Harris for President ad will hit the airwaves. And the Pulse, well, we managed to get an exclusive look at it right now.
She's the district attorney who protected children from sexual predators. She's the attorney general who stood up to the big banks to protect homeowners and won. The senator.
I bet you the Future Forward PAC people would love us to air the whole thing, but we're not going to do that. We just wanted to give you a little taste. When they buy the airtime, you'll be able to watch the whole thing. We like to say the road to the White House runs through Michigan, so it's no surprise our state was chosen as the launch pad for these first TV ads. They'll debut on air tomorrow morning. All right, campaign ads are something we are obviously going to see a lot of, but something we might not see is another presidential debate. At least it doesn't seem that way tonight. Former President Trump sending out a campaign email in which he says he will not take part in the previously scheduled ABC News debate for September 10th. The former president says he agreed to debate Biden, not Harris. But some of Harris's allies say there may be a different reason.
It's extraordinary. Tough talk is this guy's calling card. And now there's this extraordinary show of weakness. He agreed to, he said anytime, any place. But more than that, he agreed to this specific debate on this specific network on this specific date. And now he's pulling out.
Trump would argue with this specific candidate. He says you got to wait. We don't know what the Democrats are going to do. We got to wait for the convention. Comments like that bring us to our big story tonight, an unfortunate reality in modern politics. It very quickly became a mudslinging contest, and this week, lawmakers wasted no time diving headfirst into the mud. It all started early this week with an alarming comment from Republican U.S. Congressman Tim Burchett of Tennessee. Here it is.
Are you suggesting she was a DEI hire?
100%. She was a DEI hire. He said he was going to hire, and she didn't. Her record is abysmal at best.
House Speaker Mike Johnson reportedly held a closed-door conference asking members to stop making those types of comments about the VP's race and gender and to focus on her policies. But when pressured publicly, Speaker Johnson stopped short of actually admonishing that congressman.
Tim Burchett said that she was a DEI hire. Is that appropriate?
Listen, this election, as I noted at the outset, is going to be about policies, not personalities. This is not personal with regard to Kamala Harris, and her ethnicity or her gender have nothing to do with this whatsoever. This is about who can deliver for the American people and get us out of.
All right, no war of words is complete without a salvo, though, from both sides, right? As you can imagine, it wasn't long before Democrats took notice and fired back.
Their attempt at doing that is saying anybody who, has rightfully earned their place here is DEI. I call it working your off.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that, right? We all recognize what people mean when they say DEI now, right? And it has become a safe way of basically using a racial slur against black folks, not just black folks, but particularly black folks. So I'm not surprised.
All right, so here's the deal. Congressman Burchett apologized for his comments, kind of. On a Sirius XM interview, he said, quote, "Do I wish I'd said it? No. but it was the truth. Not quite an apology. Tonight, a handful of Democrats in Congress say they may move to censure Mr. Burchett. In the meantime, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, former President Trump's running mate, taking flack for some of his past comments after a TV interview from 2021 resurfaces on social media.
Look, what I was basically saying is that we're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made, and so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. And it's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children. And how does it make any sense that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it?
All right, 3 years later, those comments didn't age well. It's sparking quite an outrage, a wave of it, including one name you don't usually hear in the political circles, Jennifer Aniston, the actress who does not have any biological children of her own, firing back in this response on Instagram, saying, "I truly can't believe this is coming from a potential VP of the United States. Mr. Vance, I pray that your daughter is fortunate enough to bear children of her own one day. I hope she will not need to turn to IVF because you are trying to take that away from her, too." Vance, just hours ago, addressed those comments during a serious XM interview.
What were you trying to say?
I guess they're comparing Kamala Harris to Jesus. I don't know. That doesn't make a ton of sense to me, Megan. But look, I know the media wants to attack me and wants me to back down on this, Megan. But the simple point that I made is that having children, becoming a father, becoming a mother, I really do think it changes your perspective in a pretty profound way. This is about criticizing the Democratic Party for becoming anti-family and anti-child.
But the question is, was that explanation good enough for people who are angered by it? On The Pulse, as you know, this isn't about the pundits alone. It's mainly about your voice. That's most paramount to us. And whenever possible, we want to hear from you on the stories that we report. So tonight, we spoke to Taylor Harrell from Detroit, who had some powerful words for the GOP vice presidential nominee.
You heard what J.D. Vance said back in 2021 about women without children and the value of their vote. You have something to say about that here on The Pulse. What is it?
Yeah, so I think that motherhood is not a monolith, and just and being a birther doesn't necessarily make you a mother, and you don't have to necessarily give birth to be a mom either. So you have aunts who have taken the mantle to be mother figures. You have mentors. My former boss, Sherry Gay Danyogo, is a mother to me. And so I think that that was a very baseless and tactless thing to say.
What does that do to people who may be on the fence, women out there who may like Trump and want to vote for him, but then they hear something like this? How important is what the vice presidential candidate says in any race? How important is that?
It is extremely important because on day one, your vice president has to be ready to take the oath of office in the event that something happens to our leader of the free world. And so we wouldn't want someone like J.D. Vance leading the charge on reproductive justice or reproductive freedoms for women in this country. And I would hope that women who are on the fence about who to vote for use this as a charge to go to vote for Kamala Harris for president of the United States.
So here's the bottom line. Alienating anybody, any voter right now is pretty dangerous, especially in this state, in Michigan. As we get close to this, obviously this election, it is so critically important that people understand that. Now, we want to give you this brand new look at this Quinnipiac University poll, which clearly shows it's not the undecided voters that are up for grabs. It's the independents. There are few people out there with a better understanding of Michigan voters than Fox 2 political insider Tim Skubik. Tim.
Hey, Roop, you've really nailed something that's very important to the outcome of this very critical presidential election, the independent voter. But let's set the background as to why they are so important. First of all, it is well known that Donald Trump has his base is solid behind him. No question about it. They would go through a blizzard to vote for him. Ms. Harris, the vice president, will inherit the base that Joe Biden had and probably add to it with some additional African-American voters. But the bad news for both candidates, they don't have enough voters on their own to win this election. So who decides the outcome? And it is, of course, the independent and undecided voters. They are important because they hold the key to the outcome of this election. In a recent national poll, which you indicated from that university, Donald Trump right now is leading Ms. Harris 55 to 41% with independent voters. That's a 14-point lead. That is well beyond the margin of error. It's a good number for him, and it's unusual because the independent independents tend to lean a little Democratic, but right now, those are the numbers nationwide. On the favorability scale, do people like the candidates? Donald Trump wins there. He gets 50% of the independents, 43% not with him. Ms. Harris gets, however, only 28% favorable ratings from independents with 56%. That is huge. That is a problem. And so her message is going to have to be tailored to those folks. She has to find the magic formula to attract independent voters in order to win this thing. And then there's another X factor. Independent voters also have a choice between these two major candidates, but another guy by the name of Kennedy. And in the state of Michigan, he's demonstrated in past polls from Epic, MRA, and others that he's getting around 8% or maybe a little bit more. The point is he is competitive when it comes to independent voters. And here's the bottom line. In a close election, if it's going to be 1 or 2 points, 8% going to one of these candidates or the other, or Mr. Kennedy, could decide the outcome there. So independent voters have a lot of power in their hands. They'll start to pay attention eventually, and when they do, so will we, to see where this is headed in the outcome. Back to you, buddy.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you, man. Taking a deep dive into a pivotal week for both the Democratic and Republican presidential tickets. Our panel will help break down this week that was, when the Pulse comes back after this. All right, back now on the Pulse on this historic week on the campaign trail, setting us up for a dramatic showdown in November. Joining us to break this down for us, Karen Dumas and Terrence Mikowski. And it is really important to point out that, Terrence, you're a Trump supporter. You have been from the beginning. And, of course, Karen, you are a Detroit News columnist, No BS, the podcast and the broadcast. It is so important to talk about debates in this entire equation here. And right now we have a couple debates in question. The one with Hill Harper running for U.S. Congress and Alyssa Slotkin got washed away because of what seemed like some confusion. You're a little upset by that.
Well, I was disappointed, but that was the 5th time that there was a canceled debate between those two. And I think the most important one was the one at the chamber for the Mackinac Policy Conference. And when Slotkin pulled out, they canceled the entire debate, which I felt was unfair to the other candidates. So this was the 5th time that she pulled out. And I think that she should debate Hill Harper, and I think that voters deserve to hear what she has to say. And she needs to, you know, stand up and have that conversation.
We're going to get into the presidential stuff here in just a moment, but I want to point out Slotkin's camp released a statement to us saying they're grateful to that radio station for their work to set up the debate. They say Alyssa agreed to it over a month ago and was prepping in earnest. She will instead continue to directly engage voters in Detroit and across the state. Apparently there was a letter written saying there wasn't female representation on the debate stage. There's a lot going on in our world. Let's talk about the presidential debate. Donald Trump did agree to debate with Joe Biden in September. He's saying, Terrence, that this is no longer the same debate. He's going to wait. Is that backing out?
Oh, I don't believe he's backing out. I believe he wants to make sure that Kamala is going to be the candidate. Why give 2 or 3 bites at the apple? She hasn't been nominated as of yet. As early as August 6th, I believe they're going to do a video chat to do their polls, or the DNC is going to be the 19th through the 22nd of August. I definitely wouldn't debate her until after I knew she was a candidate.
But she already has essentially secured 1,976 of the delegates.
So if she would be destroyed in a debate, you don't think that the Republicans or the Democratic Party could then, at their convention, decide that they might want a different candidate? I think it's quite possible. It's quite realistic. So in all fairness, I wouldn't do it either. I don't understand what the debate is about. Give it another week. Give it 2 weeks or 3 weeks when they name her as their nominee. And Trump already said he'll debate her numerous times after that. Let's make sure that she's the nominee, and then we can have the debate.
Karen, how important is it for the American people to hear from both of these folks? Is it just political theater, or is this substantive? Is this something that you think people will learn from?
Well, the debate that took place between Donald Trump and Joe Biden changed the trajectory of this entire campaign. So we obviously see the importance of debates, but I think that it's important. It should be substantive, but it should not be political theater. So I don't, Donald Trump is good. You know, with the clapbacks, I think they should be focused more on content and substance. And I think that it'll depend on who the moderators are. You remember when Hillary participated and there was a question about a leak to the questions. So there's an integrity of the process that needs to be reassured to the American voters.
Let's talk about what both candidates may be fearing in all of this. Terrence Mikowski, you know Donald Trump. You've met him many of times. You've supported him. Do you think that going up against a really strong woman who's a prosecutor is more frightening to him than going up against a political rival that is the same sex, same gender?
Well, I know Donald Trump, but I don't think he's afraid of anybody. And I think that was proven during his assassination attempt. The gentleman was shot, stood up, and said, fight. I have no qualms whatsoever about him being a strong man who would never back down from any man, woman, girl, boy, child. No, I don't think that's an issue at all.
What about some of the below the belt shots that we hear? And let's just be frank, I don't think this is taking a side here, but Donald Trump is known to come up with nicknames: Sleepy Joe, Crooked Hillary, right. Crooked Joe. Right. Are we at a place in America where we need better from our candidates and not treat this like a garbage pail kid fight back and forth, but rather really come out with the policy points?
I think Donald is a New York attitude, and that he was born and raised that way, and I think that's his personality. But me and Karen talked earlier in the green room, and we definitely have to get back to the facts, your policies. We have to talk about the issues for America. This isn't about Donald Trump or really Kamala Harris. This is about the American people.
Karen, we talk about independent voters being so important in this race. We just heard from Tim Skubic talking about that. If independent voters are critically important, is Kamala Harris too far left, too liberal with some of her policies, with climate change, with other things, that maybe she's turning off some voters?
Well, I'm not sure, and that's yet to be seen. But in order for that to happen, or for those independent voters to decide, we do have to focus on substance, and this should focus on policy and not personality. I mean, and that's what politics all around at every level has turned into. It's turned into a popularity contest, and who has the best comeback or clapback, or, you know, I mean, that is disingenuous to us. And so I think that in order to win over undecided voters or independent voters, I think both candidates are going to have to say, not just show who they are, but talk about what they're going to stand for.
Talk about endorsements for a moment. Former President Obama comes out strong with Kamala Harris. How much does that help her?
Well, it possibly helped. I mean, Obama is very strong and influential in the Democratic Party, so I think that that's going to have something. I see a similarity between the two because I keep hearing the word hope, and that's what Obama actually won on, is hope, but hope is not a strategy. And so again, I think that the American people really want some substance. You know, there are a lot of people hurting economically, socially. We talked about the racial divisiveness that continues to exist in this country. So I think that, you know, this is an opportunity to really lay out a substantive plan that would be realistic and meaningful to the American people.
Do you believe that Kamala Harris is truly the best person for this job?
I think at the time, I think, you know, she has re-energized the campaign. She's re-energized the Democratic Party. And so given who we had at first, people were kind of, you know, they weren't really feeling Joe Biden, but out of respect, they didn't want to say that they weren't.
Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump. Take us to November, Terry, for the final word here. What happens?
Oh, I believe Donald Trump is going to win hands down. I can't believe that they would nominate Kamala with her numbers. I think she was doing worse than Joe Biden was. Donald Trump, 2024.
Terrence Mikowski, Karen Dumas, good to see both of you. We're going to have you back on. We'll enjoy talking to both of you for some perspective here. Good to see you both. It's a double-edged sword, staying informed on this crazy election cycle without going crazy yourself. Clinical psychologist Dr. Rose Moten shares some strategies on how to avoid political stress when the pulse comes back after this. This is a great job. Back now, taking the pulse on power, politics, and most importantly, people. You know, they say don't talk about what? Religion, money, or politics. Good luck in 2024. Sometimes it's not just about being polite, it's to avoid unneeded stress and drama. But when the stress becomes harder and harder to avoid, how do you remain informed without losing your sanity? We asked clinical psychologist, author, and life coach, Dr. Rose Moten.
I know you can't talk about what your clients are telling you, but I have to ask you the question. Are people getting stressed out by all of this?
Absolutely, people are getting stressed out just with everything going on. And we know that's the nature of the political season, right? So we have to understand the source of the stress with all the media coverage, the heated debates, and the polarized opinions that are out there. You know, it's inevitable that we're going to feel some level of stress with all of this.
What about the connection people feel towards these candidates? It seems like the people who really like Kamala Harris take it personally when someone says something wrong about her, and people who really like Donald Trump, people take it personally when people say things that are negative about him. Is that a problem to closely identify with somebody who you don't even know and get offended when someone says something bad about someone like that?
And you know, I think we have situations where we have extremes. We know that. So we have extreme supporters of these candidates. And we also have individuals just on a moral and human, just decency level, that some things that are being said can be quite offensive if you like the candidate or not.
Kamala Harris and Donald Trump may care about this country, but they don't know us individually. So for us to sit here and so closely identify with this man and woman and become emotionally attached to them and any bad comment about them seems really harmful to us.
Yeah, so there's a psychological phenomenon, because even though, a great point you just made, they don't know us personally, right? But we've seen these individuals in our homes multiple times a week for many, many years. And so on some level, there's a sense with individuals that they know these candidates, that there's a closer relationship and bond that there actually is. And we can really blur the lines as far as that type of reality goes. And that's why it's so important for us to just take a moment and kind of just do an internal check of ourselves to make sure, you know, first of all, that we're gathering all the facts. First of all, that we're coming from a place of informed, you know, decision making, as opposed to coming from a place of emotion. We're going to have a lot of heated emotions from individuals, and it's understandable, especially when you hear things that are being said that may just again, on a human, just morality level, that does not seem fair or just seems to be kind of just hitting below the belt. And we want to be careful to kind of refrain from just acting from a place of emotion, because that's going to pull you deeper into this place of just being stressed out.
Thank you, Dr. Moten. That is our show for tonight. Thank you for joining us as we wade through this messy political cycle together. You can always email me with your thoughts, ruth.raj@fox.com. I can take the negative email too. Hit me up. Also on social media. Who knows? We may put your input right here on our show. Good to be with you. I'm Ruth Raj. Good night.